There was a spiritual writer who wrote and said that we change our lives or behaviors not because we're afraid of dying, but because we want a new life, a new joy of living. So I change my life not because of any fear of death, but rather because I want to be more alive. That's really at the root of all of the readings tonight. Every one of them, from the first of Ezekiel down to the gospel, talked about coming alive, bringing life to where there was only death. Didn't you feel that you were really standing next to Martha and you wanted to egg her on a little bit more? Haven't you felt like Martha when she said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died"? I did. There's a number of times in my life I'd like to have said that, and I have. Lord, where were you? Where were you, Lord, when my friend betrayed me? Where were you, Lord, when that accident happened? Where were you, Lord, when my friend was dealing so severely with cancer? Where were you, Lord, when that spouse that I love so much has suddenly grown cold and distant from me? Where were you, Lord, when everything went south on me? Where were you, Lord, when I lost my job and was downsized? Where were you, Lord? Didn't you feel like cheering Martha on when she said that to the Lord? Didn't you want to say, "You tell him, Martha. Ask him. Where was he in all of those situations? Where is he now?" And that's really, I think, what the Lord is calling us to say. Where are you now, Lord? What are you really doing for us? I guess you see, you look at Martha and you say, all right, Martha, you're good for you. You're blessed because you saw your brother rise from the dead. You saw your brother Lazarus come out of the tomb. Good for you. A happy ending. And I guess I expect my life to have all happy endings too. Then I look at the first reading, Ezekiel. Ezekiel there is amidst all the scattered dead bones. They're all on the ground. And he prays and suddenly they become alive. Those dead things now are in flesh and have life to them. So good for you, Ezekiel. I'm happy for you. It all came aright to you. Another happy ending. But not all of mine are happy endings. Not all of yours. So what do you and I do? You and I who live amidst the dry bones and the dead brothers. How do we live? Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And then Ezekiel, who reminds us that out of these dead bones, life will come. What am I to make of those promises? And maybe that's where I need to look again at the second reading. It's Paul. He is writing, and I think he gives us a key to say, how do you live with the promises and the happy endings of Ezekiel and Lazarus, and yet still with the dying relatives and the dryness in our lives? It is Paul who tells us very clearly that you and I know that the God who gives life will bring life to you and me. He says, it is true. I will bring you life. And that's really the key, I think. The Lord will bring us life now, not just at the end of our lives. You see, the Lord is praying there, and he says, Lord, I am praying so that all of these will come to know you have sent me. Well, welcome to the crowd. We're just as doubting as those who were with Lazarus at that tomb. Don't roll back the tomb, they say. There'll be a terrible odor. Don't open it up. Surely this man can't give life to a dead one. Or those who would have ridiculed Ezekiel. What do you think? Dead bones from a desert are suddenly alive and move around? Yeah, we're that crowd. That's why he prayed. I'm praying, Lord, so they'll know that you sent me and that I can do these things. So come out of that tomb, he shouts, and Lazarus comes out, and Ezekiel's bones come to life. So I know, because of that, I know the Lord can do it. I know the Lord has the power to do it. So all I have to say is, what about my happy endings? And then I recognize it's not about the endings. It's about the middle. It's not just about death giving way to life. Because you and I know a lot of people who walk around, but they're not alive. They may be living, but they're not alive. They're shells of who they can be. That's what Ezekiel is about, and that's what Lazarus is about. Telling you and I that you'll never understand resurrection in real life if you don't see the rising in your own life. A writer said a few weeks ago when I was reading, he said the difference between a rut and a grave is about 5 feet. I love that remark. Do you want to live in your graves? Then get out of your ruts, was the point of his story. Yes, and that pertains to this, doesn't it? I still live in the graves when he's saying, get out of your ruts, and you won't have to live in the grave. You see, the calling of Lazarus out of death to life is the calling of us out of our ruts to new life. The Ezekiel who said there are dry bones are saying those whose spirit seems sapped, whose life seems gone or drained away, can still be restored and renewed. Those stories are for us. Get out of your ruts because you're making them tombs. When have you seen someone rise out of a rut or a tomb? Have you ever been to an AA meeting? Hearing someone in a 12-step program speak of their brokenness and now embrace their wholeness and rely on the power of their God and the goodness of this community to raise them up out of that rut and that tomb, and how they have found new life and new hope. That's new life. Have you ever been to a retrovi or marriage encounter weekend where couples who may be struggling or other couples who are trying to recapture and kindle a flame have found that spark begin, or at least a reconciliation start, an embrace giving way to where once there was only cold chills and angry words? Then you've seen some rise from the tombs. Have you seen, as did a woman who was talking about an anger with a friend who had betrayed her a number of years ago, finally soften? And although they were not reconciled in a physical way, she could let it go in her heart and no longer harbor the bitterness and vengeance. Her burden lightened, her outlook changed, and her reconciliation, at least offering the hand, was there. Or how about the man who turns away from all the inappropriate stuff on the internet and says, I cannot any longer excuse that behavior because it's destroying who I am and harming who my family is. There's new life coming out of that rut, emerging from those tombs. You see, the readings are surely about the God who gives life after death, but because he can do that, you and I are promised we can rise above whatever rut and grave we live in. And that's why I say, happy are you, Mary, blessed are you, Mary, because you don't have to live in that rut anymore, where you doubt that God can raise the dead. And you live differently now, Mary, because you know that nothing will overcome you. No doubt, no fear will crush you. And happy are you, Ezekiel, because you know now, even in the dry desert of your life, there's life, and God can bring life out of what was only darkness and discouragement or even depression and anxiety. That's why those readings are so good for you and me. Lord, if you had been here, and the Lord would say, I already am. Lord, if you had, and then I stop. I know you're here, Lord. Just let me embrace the life you're giving me now. Let me live like one fully alive. I know I can change. It won't be death that changes me. It'll be that call to life. Come out, the Lord says. Come out and live. And then I know, Lord, you've always been with me.